Hi, I'm Toby. I don't know about you, but I'm struggling to find life positive at the moment due to everything that's going on, but I'm going to have a jolly good go. So I've got a friend of mine to choose a Doctor Who story and to nominate their favourite things about it, one per episode and one bonus thing. And I'm going to watch along to try and mine it for those positives and see what my friend has chosen. You going to join me? Welcome to Happy Times and Places, a Doctor Who episode commentary podcast with me, Toby Hadoke. So, our latest guest has told me which story we'll be watching, and now they're going to tell you.
Hi Toby, my name is John Cooper and I'm a comedian and illustrator. The story I've chosen is Time Flight because I think it's amazing and imaginative and has my favourite Doctor Who in it and the supersonic aeroplane Concorde, and I remember telling you it was my favourite story and you telling me it was rubbish. So it's not, it's amazing.
Time Flight is available from the BBC either as a single DVD or as part of the Season 19 Blu-ray box set. So I hope you've popped it into your player and are ready for this viewing. Well, tonight's going swimmingly so far. I'll tell you all about that and this in a moment. But if you've managed to get your hands on your remote control, or whatever it is you use, please press play now. Oh, it's been quite an evening. I was intending to polish this off fairly quickly, and it's taken me about an hour and 3/4 to find the remote control. There's nothing temporary about this limiter. I'm probably going to be mean about some of the technology in Time Flight, but you know what? People will look back on us in the future and go, why did they have a thing that you couldn't use? It hasn't got any buttons on it, the Blu-ray player, that you couldn't use unless you could find a piece of equipment approximately the size of a microbe. Anyway, it's Time Flight, which I thought was going to be the most of my problems this evening. But we will address that because this is a positive podcast / videocast. And one of the reasons for doing this, John Flint, who's in The Crusade as Sir William de Preo. I know a rather sad story about him, but this is early days for this, and I'm not sure if this is the right medium to unveil a tragedy. I might take advisement on that and talk in more detail when I get to do The Crusade, where he has rather more to do. He has some lovely scenes with Jacqueline Hill as Barbara, and I was rather disappointed. I was rather disappointed when I watched this many years later to realise how little he does, because he was an actor from the Hartnell era, illustrious. Be quiet, Alexa, don't you ruin my life as well. Technology is besetting me this evening. We should be doing the Seeds of Death, so I could talk about putting all your eggs in one basket. But this podcast was designed to be positive, and there's nothing worse than actually looking around for somebody to talk about or write about something that you love or that you like, only to find them be mean about it. And we're currently in the midst of coronavirus and various schisms between people, politically, ideologically, and even in the world of Doctor Who. And so actually it's quite timely that John Cooper, my good friend, fine comic, chose Time Flight, and in his introduction that you'll have just heard, sort of said when he told me it was his favourite story, I said it was rubbish. I hate me for doing that. When somebody enthusiastically says to you, I like this thing, they go, oh, God. So in a way, I've been, I've had a shot across my own bows early on in this to sort of point out, that I'm as guilty of the things that I'm reacting against in this podcast. And here we have the season story arc, the death of Adric, being addressed. Now, I think I'd missed the beginning of episode 1. I might talk about that later as well. When this was on. So I don't think I'd seen them sort of address the death of Adric. Adric has died in tragic circumstances, one of the most memorable parts of my childhood. And of course, they addressed that at the beginning of this story. And Peter Davison sells it very, very well. He's such a good actor. And essentially they go, Adric is dead. It's not that kind of show. Let's just get on with it. And in fact, that was sort of telly of the time. There weren't, things like Juliet Bravo and all the sort of episodic telly that you watched, Bergerac, things like that. There was nothing that sort of hung around to distract from what was going on this week. A different way of doing things. And I have to say, I love the new series. But when at the end of The Runaway Bride, the doctor said, her name was Rose, I was like, no, she's got, we're not gonna be banging on about her. And I love Rose, and I was really sad that she went, but she's gone. Have an adventure on a planet I've never been to before. I don't want you crying. Although, of course, all of that stuff is so well done. But, this is really... He's basically said, we've drawn a line under Adric. In fact, we're going to have, as soon as we hit Heathrow Airport, we're in caper mode. But as a youngster, and as part of the appeal with Doctor Who, I think is always, where are they taking us this week? Or, the start of a new adventure is always what are you unleashing that's fresh and new? Because that was the thing about Doctor Who, is that it does. I always say he doesn't necessarily travel in time and space as much as he travels in genre. You can have, look at this season, Kinder, Black Orchid, Earthshock are almost entirely different television programs. And that's what I love about Doctor Who, is that the TARDIS can land on a freeze frame of Heathrow Airport. And my main... As I say, I'm watching the Blu-ray, by the way, for the first time. I've seen the special features, but I've not watched the adventure. So it's sort of freshly minted, because I thought I don't think I watched any of the stories on this set, and certainly not. Time Flight would not have been top of my list, which is why I'm sort of quite excited. I do remember Airport Control being in a cupboard with files on the back of the wall. But Heathrow itself, this is... credit to John Nathan Turner, actually. And I seem to recall when he submitted the script, because you had to submit the scripts upstairs, didn't you? When he submitted the scripts to his boss went... yeah, that's fine, but you'll never get permission to film at Heathrow Airport. And he sort of went, actually, I've already got filming dates scheduled for here, here, and here. And you sort of go, yeah, because you can imagine what sort of person the boss would have been. Yeah, you'll never do that. You get quite a lot of dismissive people in high-up positions just going, you'll never do that. Whereas they should be going, that's a brilliant idea. Let us know how we can help you. And Nathan Turner, for all of his controversial takes on the show, knew how to grab a headline and filming at Heathrow. And of course, with Tegan's story, Tegan has been trying to get to Heathrow all season. So that's the other story arc. The big bad is the geographical location of Heathrow Airport. And now this is Peter Sellier as Andrews, the security officer. Peter Sellier is a fine actor, and I was too young to know who he was when I first watched this, and when I got the sort of Doctor Who magazine with the episode guide, and I was Peter Sellier, because he was around. He was in all sorts of sitcoms. He's in Keeping Up Appearances, and Yes Minister, as I think quite often. I think he's a semi-regular in Yes Minister, or certainly appears in it more than once. But he sort of missed vicar slash civil servant in sitcom and has had a fine stage career and is still going. Good for him. I think he must be one of the Doctor Who's nonagerians. I'm guessing he must be 90. And I remember being quite shocked to go, Andrews? Well, I don't even know who that is in Time Flight, and it's a one episode part. He must have just been a bit, just not had all that much going on. Now, I loved all of this as a kid. Sir John Sudbury. Now, I assumed that must be some continuity reference. No, it's just thrown in. He's one of those. But Brigadier Lethbridge. That was enough to make my week. The mention of somebody from the past. It's a very Doctor Who fan thing that instead of enjoying the present, you worry about the future, and you love to be in touch with the past. I'm not speaking for every Doctor Who fan. I am speaking for myself, certainly in my younger years. So, in a sense, you can understand John Nathan Turner doing what he did, which was so often invoke the past, because it went down so well when he did, and I was one of those people. I mean, not a vocal one. I was out in the countryside in the middle of nowhere. Doctor was very much a solo pleasure, quiet at the back. But the past, and we mock the past so much now, and I don't think we're any better for it. The past, to me, was hallowed ground where they did things better and properly. I don't know when it happened when we decided to look at, say, old telly and mock it, which is, again, this is hopefully an antidote to. And again, I've had a reminder of why, yes, some of the technology may be slightly limited on this, but ours isn't all it's cracked up to be. I was so furious. And of course, the more I looked, the more furious I got. I feel like I started looking when I was in Jurassic England. But this is a very different story from the one you have in your mind's eye, because this episode is a mystery of a missing Concorde. We haven't got to the bits that everybody sort of talks about. Peter Davis himself did an interview when he talked about this. Oh, look at that gorgeous shot of the Concorde in the snow. That is so beautiful. I mean, that is $1 million. As I say, Peter Davison talked about that set. He did an interview on a documentary called The Doctors, and said, it looked a bit crap. And I know John Nathan Turner wasn't over the moon about that. He wasn't saying Doctor Who is crap. He was saying the set of Jurassic England looks crap. I love the TARDIS on the forklift truck on its side. The TARDIS is brilliant, isn't it? Because it sort of fits in anywhere, whilst looking kind of incongruous anywhere, which is exactly what you want. It's sort of comfortable. It's a comfortable shape and a comfortable colour, but it is slightly old-fashioned and ramshackle, but therefore fits quite quaintly into anywhere. I love the TARDIS on the forklift truck in the snow. What a great image. See, this is looking... In fact, I mean, the studio stuff is quite studio-y, but that's okay. That looks not unlike any drama that would have been on at the time. And this film stuff looks absolutely gorgeous. The Concorde looks great. The snow, there's some fantastic publicity photos. I remember there was a Doctor Who magazine I had very few, which had... Did it have Tegan or did it have all of them on there? Can't even remember, but a great shot of them with the Concorde. Richard Easton as Captain Stapley. Now, the last time I watched this, actually, was for a book I wrote with Rob Shearman called Running Through Corridors. And the third volume hasn't been published yet. It is all done in various forms. But I think the thing we both came out of loving with when we watched this was Richard Easton, who gives such a game performance. I always feel sorry for the two men in the cupboard, who I will talk about when they come back. Great shot of Concorde. I'm really loving the airport setting. I think it well, obviously the Faceless Ones has an airport, but that feels special because of that. Just the thing of going, oh, let's set it in a place. Let's just mix things up a bit. Give us an interesting setting. Although I mean, I'm no expert, but I don't think that's what airport control looks like. I think it's the filing cabinet in the background, and a man in a brown jumper. I don't know. It just looks like he's lounging around on a Sunday looking for a book to read. And the confusing thing for me as a youngster who wanted to know things was that those two men in the cupboard, one, the man with the moustache, who's Brian McDermott, very interesting and eccentric actor, who I will talk about later, and Peter Dalson, who I haven't seen in anything else, I don't think. He's done bits and bobs, but none that I stick in mind to me. These two, neither of their characters are referred to by name on screen, so I didn't know which one was which for ages and ages and ages until I found out a bit more about Brian McDermott, who was one of the earliest people to, or certainly an early advocate and stander for the referendum party, as was that sort of became UKIP. And he did, I think, one-man shows about Saddam Hussein and Adolf Hitler. He was a bit of a character, a bit of an eccentric, and yes, a man who wanted an independent Britain and would do agitprop sort of theatre and one-man shows in order to make that point. And ran a theatre company and was a bit of a character. He does lots of what I call clench fist official acting in this, where you show that you're a little bit testy by every time you walk, you got your hand by your side doing that. It's a particular character actor trait in sort of dramas involving boardrooms or testy officials. He's actually not unlike, although not I would contend not an actor in quite the same league as Colin Gordon as the commandant in The Faceless Ones, who is also a testy mustachioed official. But Colin Gordon, we will wait till we get to The Faceless Ones, which has yet to be claimed. Keith Drinkle here as Roger Scobie was in a lot at the time. Cropped up in all sorts of things. Still around. He's in a spin-off video. Is it video? Do you call them videos nowadays? He's in a spin-off called Zygon, and you see rather a lot of him, I have to say. The sort of thing I associate with Doctor Who. But there is something glorious about the fact that there's a slightly saucy, but it's not saucy. It's just got nudity in it to sort of go, we're grown up. We may be from the Doctor Who show, but look, here's a winkle. And it's Drinkle's winkle. Oh dear. This still looks great. The episode has interesting because it's sort of down as a duff production. Crap, as Peter Davison said. It looks great so far, and the film stuff is really nicely shot. I adored that shot of the Concorde. And you know, there's just something about real metal and rust and snow, that sort of things that you don't get in a studio. So they just really help, and they're unusual, you know, because we are so used to stuff being largely in the studio with Doctor Who. Oh yes, of course, this is where it suddenly all goes right. So you're suddenly in the studio, and they're suddenly CSO. I mean, I have to say, I don't think that's transmittable today. I don't think you could. I mean, we've gone from really nice, convincing film, and we're supposed to be in the same place. I know it's an illusion, and we're waiting for a special effect to transport us to Paleolithic times or whenever they are. But in terms of the continuity of the visual image, that cut of that beautiful film shot of Nyssa to that videotape shot of the corpses to this fringy CSO abomination. television is that would not pass technical standards now. And it's really odd because the wipe doesn't have them in the same standing positions. I was expecting the sort of wipe. I knew it became Jurassic England. I was expecting them to be standing in the same place, which would necessitate the CSO we saw before. They could have done all that previous bit on film, and then cut to videotape after the flash. It would have been a much better cut now. But I am supposed to be accentuating the positive, and it's a very neat idea, and you can never criticise Doctor Who for its ambition. You can't, because what separated Doctor Who from all the other television shows for me at the time was that it did things no other television show did. And Doctor Who should always try to do things that no other television show should do. And sometimes that means not quite pulling it off. But in a world where, like that BBC man said, oh, you'll never get Concorde. Well, he did. So actually it was worth a try, wasn't it? So they didn't pull that off. But nobody didn't have a go. And sometimes people have a go and they get it wrong. I mean, as a child, this totally convinced me. I was rather sad for the actor Leon Tai for being bottom of the credits when he was playing the villain. I didn't get that yet because I read the credits. And that building's great. The perspective works there, actually. It's such a big ask to do. That's a decent shot, actually. That little effect shot. I'd forgotten about that. It's a big ask to do this set in a studio. Actually, those rocks are fine. And I do like the 3 pilots. And I believe that Ron Jones didn't realise that Anthony Ainley would be playing Khalid, which might have, because it's interesting though, because I've never seen this being described as problematic in a way that John Bennett in The Talons of Weng Chiang is, but it's the same thing, I suppose, because it is the master in disguise. I suppose it is justified in those terms, but it is. But that's a nice shot of the Doctor and Tegan through the wreckage. That was rendered in a nice point of view shot as well. Credit to Peter Davison. He's always on the ball. Always seeking to make it work and seeking to make it interesting. They're very old-fashioned, aren't they? These pilots. I don't know any pilots, so I don't know if they're. Oh, actually, my friend Mark was a military pilot. But now watching this Blu-ray, it's been cleaned up. The backdrop is Indian Juju Man. I think that's quite problematic as well. Dave Culshaw and Angela Clifford. Now, Dave Culshaw is Barney Lawrence, who had been a Marshman, but had also been one of the androids in Earthshock. So it's quite nice for us to see his face finally. I didn't know you had a New York stopover. Is that Angela Clifford's line? Poor old Angela Clifford. Now that was the plasmatons, which is again another sort of brave stab, isn't it? I I think if they didn't have legs, and it's a bit like the Slitheen, isn't it? Is that they're rendered with the visual effect, a bit of bubble bath later on, and the men with legs, like the Slitheen when they were CGI and they were suited. It's difficult to marry them all together. Although the addition of the bubble bath actually helps to meld them there, so that's okay. Yeah, some tricky visuals, I have to say, in the last few minutes. But up to that, it's an intriguing adventure with a testy commandant, Horton or Sheard. And John Flint gets credited above Peter Sellier. Goodness. Right, Leon Tai right at the bottom. Yeah, that was quite jolly. It's quite a jolly romp so far, but gosh, the budget's a hard one to wrangle. But I'm not arguing with the ambition, and sometimes good solid ambition is worth a cartload of cash, or some such. So I have to... I've got to press pause, which I will do now, because I think I'm on Play All on my Blu-ray box set. So, I've got to choose my favourite thing of that. Well, I think it's the film work. I think it's the shot of Concorde on film, that beautiful shot of Concorde. But if I'll take in the whole snow, the TARDIS on the forklift truck. So, the film work on the landing place, whatever it's called, at Heathrow Airport, I thought was glorious. What has lovely John Cooper chosen? Now he's on music, and I've lined him up. I don't know what he's going to say. It's all a mystery to me.
My favourite thing about episode 1 is the plasmatons, because I remember that back in the day, anything that was an amorphous blobby thing would scare me, like the things in the Three Doctors as well. So the plasmatons from episode 1.
That's interesting. The plasmaton. Okay. Well, isn't that because, of course, John is going back to his childhood. I hadn't actually remembered the plasmatons from when I was a kid. I'd not remembered the monsters. I'd remembered Professor Hater, and I'd remembered the Xeraphim. But the plasmatons I'd totally forgotten. So obviously John's hooked in there because they're a memory from his youth. Note to self: somebody watched the Three Doctors as a kid might choose the Gel Guards if John's anything to go by there. Okay, so I chose the Concorde. John chose the plasmatons, so I didn't guess what he guessed. Let's see if I can guess what he does in future episodes. But that is for another edition. So I'm just going to go and line up the next bit. Sorry, I was going to say I'm just going to go and smash up my Blu-ray player because of this thing, which means I'm now about 2 hours behind schedule. But I could be in Jurassic England. I could be in a BBC studio in the early 1980s having to make Jurassic England on a shoestring budget. So actually, I'm very lucky. Thank you very much for joining me. Join me for episode 2 of Time Flight. Until next time, goodbye.
I think you'll find.
Now, not so much as a correction, but actually picking myself up on something I neglected. Perhaps I'm correcting myself. Peter Dalston, who plays the brown-jumpered man in the very small radar office, is an Australian actor, and I knew something about him. I knew that he'd gone into law, and indeed he was called to the bar in 1996. And I have seen him in things. He was in an Australian series called Bodyline, which I saw, and he was in Sons and Daughters. There can't be many people who've been in Doctor Who and Sons and Daughters. But yes, Peter Dawson is now a trial advocate, and he has done lots of trial work, including murders, attempted murders, manslaughters, and has represented a number of defendants facing the most serious crimes. So he's mostly a criminal defence lawyer now. So even somebody whose sole contribution to Doctor Who is to sit in a cupboard in a beige shirt and a brown jumper has a fascinating story to tell. I'm going to put him on my list of people to maybe pursue and see if I can get him to tell his story, because I'm sure he's got some memories of Doctor Who, and I'm sure he's had a very interesting life since. But I didn't want to just leave him hanging as the man in the brown jumper. I think you'll find there's more to him than that. Of course there is. Right, well, I'm a little bit tired because it's taken me slightly longer to embark upon tonight's quest back in time, because it took me as long as it took the dinosaurs to die out to find the remote control. I have it here, and I'm about to press play to get episode 2 of Time Flight going, and I hope you're going to do the same in 3, 2, 1. And that took far longer than episode 1. I try my best. Yeah. Be quiet, Alexa, or I shall smash you to pieces with a hammer. I live with a robot woman who ruins my life. So that, yes, look. By the very fact these are being done by me, they're going to be quite ramshackle. So if you're into exactness in terms of lining up of episodes and, you know, the sort of little professional tweaks, they're not going to happen. I mean, I will work hard to make sure the font is fastidiously observed on the closing credits. But so yeah, there will be certain things that are very will take me an unnecessarily large amount of time to pull off. But the actual doing of it, I actually think that costume and that makeup, it, as I said last week, Khalid totally convinced me as a bad guy. I mean, you can see Anthony Ainley's in there now, but he goes for it, and the makeup disguises him effectively. They bulked him out a bit as well, and he was a sort of convincing bad guy. Ooh, the doctor's question marks on his lapel are backwards. The question marks get a hard time now. I think because they sort of spread like a rash, didn't they? Sort of got one and then they gradually spread all over his body. I loved the question mark lapels as a young man. I thought they were a really sort of neat little touch, as I say, and you can have too much of a good thing, Doctor Number 7. I didn't like the cricket thing as a kid, because even though I played cricket at school, I think it tied him too much with one particular image. But actually, I do like this costume. I think it's only the jumper that sort of says 100%. He's not travelling through space and time. He's on his way to a cricket game. I think if the jumper didn't look like it couldn't be worn for anything else, I think the rest of the costume would get away with it. The silhouette's great, and I think the colours are great. And actually, cricket whites are quite a sort of dull colour. So actually, the splashes of colour that have been thrown in there, I actually think it's rather an elegant, nice costume. I just think the jumper is too work specific. What you're too associated with one particular thing. The Professor Hater's dressed as Matt Smith. Professor Hater's cosplaying as the 11th Doctor. Look at him. He really is. You heard it here first. Or is that what Matt Smith was channeling? I think he's the Nigel Stock Doctor. Nigel Stock, a fine actor, who I remember, I think, his presence impressed, if not I think maybe my granddad, who was never massively demonstrative about a lot of things, but he knew if a good actor was in something, even though he had no theatrical associations at all. He just knew stuff, my granddad. He was of that generation. You could ask him anything about. He'd left school at, I think, 9 or something ridiculous. He was one of 12 kids, and yet probably knew more about a broad range of subjects than anybody I've ever met, because he just got on with life. And I think because he'd been denied an education, soaked up knowledge. And I stayed. It's not entirely irrelevant that I talk about him here, because I stayed at my grandparents' when this was on, and they are the reason I missed the beginning of some of it, because they were. My grandmother was a Methodist who was all about, morals and stuff. You shouldn't drink, she'd say, and then at Christmas would have a Stone's Green ginger wine, and that somehow didn't count. But they lied to me. They lied to me because they watched Crossroads, I think. And I said, oh, but Doctor Who's on. Doctor Who's on. They said, it's all right. It finishes before Doctor Who. And, they turn over, and I'd go, oh, but it started. They go, no, you've just missed the very beginning. And actually it turned out I missed a good chunk of it. And that, particularly when it comes to episode 4, because I remember Nigel Stock gets credited in episode 4. And he's not in, and I thought he wasn't in it, and I assumed it was just that he was on the reprise from the end of episode 3 where he dies, but no, he actually appears in a scene in the TARDIS with Stapley and Michael Cashman, Bilton. But I didn't see that scene, and that's quite a way in. We will see how much my grandparents made me to watch blooming Crossroads. But it was the fact that they fibbed to me. I knew that I wouldn't challenge, I wouldn't challenge that. That was quite mean. For Crossroads, I think it was Crossroads. So I was definitely with them for episodes 3 and 4. I don't know if I was for episode 2, but I certainly, I don't think I saw the scene where they sort of got over the death of Adric. So maybe I just kept missing the beginning of episodes of Doctor Who. Maybe it was to give myself something to discover later in life. Stock was of good stock, a fine actor. I remember I live outside a place called Ludlow in Shropshire, and have the Ludlow Festival where visiting actors would come and do things. And I remember in the paper it said an actor who was due to come to the Ludlow Festival has died, and it was Nigel Stock. And I thought of him as very old. I think he was only in his mid-60s probably when he died, if that. But, which is no age now. I've got mates who are 60. That's terrifying, isn't it? I loved Nyssa. Nyssa was my favourite as a youngster. I held a bit of a torch for Nyssa, and I love her costume. Her costume's absolutely gorgeous. The colours actually of this era, and they don't do that costume, because obviously it's not a contemporary costume, but I think the Amy Roberts, June Hudson costume aegis do have a sort of theatrical grandeur that are really helpful in not being very 1980s, but being a bit, but because they're slightly theatrical and therefore redolent of the past. I don't look at Nyssa's costume and go, oh, that's from a television show from the 1980s. But I could be wrong, because I don't know anything about costume, but and it's tied with my childhood. I love Captain Stapley. I'll stay with Nyssa. Good for you, Captain Stapley. That's the good sort. The bubble bath sort of works there, the bubble bath plasmatons. He's Davison's breathy stuff is great. Stuck on a fairly difficult set with which doesn't allow for much interesting shooting. Everyone's sort of standing around talking, although this isn't badly shot here. Some of the shots are just sort of 4 people standing in a row, but the grouping there was actually very nicely done, Ron Jones. But Davison's breathy stuff gives it such a sense of urgency and such a slight sense of panic that's quite Troughton-esque. It's weird because he doesn't look anything like Troughton. He's not, he looks like a leading man. He looks like a young leading man, whereas Troughton looks like a craggy character actor. But actually, in terms of acting style, they are not unlike each other. And I think are both splendid actors. And I don't think Peter Davison gets enough credit for being the character actor that he is, because he looks like a leading man, and because he's been such a sort of ubiquitous television face, and because he's got quite a, and I don't mean this pejoratively, quite a sort of bland face. He's got a pleasant open face, but actually his skills as a character actor are I think somewhat. I was going to say somewhat underrated, but they're not. He's never out of work. But I think he's more than a reliable TV face. I think he's a damn fine actor. Professor Hater's an absolute twat. All right, Professor Hater, you just. Yes, I'm not sure what the idea is with making Hater such a Burke, but it does make what he does next episode sort of either unexpected or unsympathetic. I don't know. These aren't bad caves. Yes, Ron Jones directed this. You've got to love a sliding rock. They're the sort of things you take for granted in programmes of this ilk. Sliding rocks, sliding bookcases, rocks that you can get hit on the head with and not get concussion, but just sort of get knocked out without any lasting brain damage. The colours of the lighting in this set are nice. Ron Jones directing this. I don't think he was the first choice, was he? I think they asked Andrew Morgan, who doesn't direct until Time of the Rani, and was a very experienced. He'd risen in the ranks as production manager and things, and I think was going to do this, and then got a better offer, and so Ron Jones, who'd done Black Orchid, I think was his first directing job, then gets this, and we sort of forget about Ron Jones because he died sort of relatively young, and I don't think he gave many interviews. There's one in Doctor Who magazine, and there's one on video, isn't there, that's turned up, or is it just photos and an audio? We have got some footage of him, and he's on the French documentary about Trial of a Time Lord, which I've only seen once about 30 years ago, but I remember him being on that because they just captured him as director, and I thought, I'll give the guy his name. He's doing a decent job here, Anthony Ainley. He's I totally buy him there as Khalid. He seems like, but I mean, it's quite an early reveal for a villain. In retrospect, now you can see why. Anyway, Ron Jones. We sort of forget was has quite a long career as a Doctor Who director, right through till season 23, right? So throughout Peter Davison and into Colin Baker, and nobody talks about him much because he Time Flight, Arc of Infinity, none of them are ever the stories that people love. Although I think he does a brilliant job on Frontios, which I'm looking forward to doing. I think is a story not talked about enough, and he does a decent job on Vengeance on Varos. And depending on how you like your Doctor Who, Mind Warp, I'm going to be interested to see how I react to that. But this, I always think this as I think people think of this as being a bit flat and a bit cheap, and it's interesting because the story is a lovely idea, isn't it? About the alien race with the two distinct sort of sides, and then being influenced by a baleful force. In this case, Khalid / the Master is a nice setup. But you don't, and it was called Seraphim at one point, but actually the Seraphim only turn up at the end of episode 3 to have a chat from a CSO studio, and so their presence isn't felt as much as it might be, and they're a really interesting concept. But I do like the incongruity. This is what Doctor Who does so well. I love the way that Captain Stapley is irritated as we are by Professor Hayter. And we love Captain Stapley. But the incongruity of these sort of besuited city gents or people in airport uniform doing this sort of parody airline stuff and trying to break into an alien catacomb. You know, if there's nothing as... Oh, see, this is good. They're doing this really, really well. And oh, that's really creepy. The idea that they can start parroting the stuff that they do as a job. That's quite a sort of grotesque parody of what they actually do because of the setting and because of the fact that we know they're parroting it because something is exerting its control. That's really good. Yeah, I thought that was really effective. Yeah, and of course, that's a very Doctor Who-y thing about. Michael Cashman. So it took Tegan. I like that. Is it the Doctor, Nyssa, Tegan, and then you go, oh yes, Tegan. So Bilton, you've got an eye for Tegan, have you? Although I remember, I don't think I'm betraying a thing. I remember because there's a making of on this, and they interview Keith Drinkle, and he said when when he was cast, Nathan Turner or some had gone, oh, that's 3 then, because Richard Easton and Michael Cashman and Keith Drinkle are all gay. So you've got a full house, which of course is neither here nor there. But because Keith Drinkle had said it, I think there was a moment where Chris, who directed things, said, is this public record? Can we include that as an amusing anecdote? And it is in the thing. So obviously it was fine. Obviously Michael Cashman is very much on public record because he went to play Colin in EastEnders and then became a campaigner for gay rights and a member of the House of Lords, and has made an illustrious contribution to politics, as he had to acting, because he'd been in the Sandbaggers, and Colin in EastEnders was a major character, the first gay kiss on sort of popular television in the UK. And then he made I think certainly one that made a big impression, and he made a documentary about it afterwards, where he sort of compared the fact that there's a heterosexual kiss in the same episode, and said, but it was only his one, which was only a peck on the cheek with the actor Gary Hales, and a national newspaper the next day said it's EastBenders. You go, I mean, this is the shadow of the times that I grew up in, and so when people kick back against political correctness or whatever. It comes from an important place. It comes from the fact that not all that long ago there are some things that were absolutely extraordinary to behold now, that were mainstream enunciations from supposedly respectable and certainly, widely digested organs. I did not intend to do blunt entendre there, but I'm quietly proud of myself that I got one in whilst making a very serious point. And Cashman's documentary was really interesting because he talked about how actually some kids came up to him and said, "Give us a fiver, give us a tenner." And he said, "No." And then eventually he said, "What's going on? Why are you doing that?" And they said, "There's a bloke over there who told us to go and ask you." And it was a photographer from a tabloid newspaper. So it's not only that they spread that sort of horrible childish stuff, but they actually convoluted it. They controlled it. But I can't talk through the appearance of Adric. Very clever of John Nathan Turner, because I'm guessing Matthew Waterhouse was probably still on contract, was he? So it wouldn't cost him anything. But it means he gets his name in the Radio Times. So fans who are looking ahead, because the Radio Times would have come out before Earthshock's final episode was broadcast, would not know that Adric wasn't in the following week because the cast list was for both episodes. I mean, he'd have been bottom of the credits, which would have been a bit odd because credits are important in order of appearance. Is Melker Graham Cole again? Certainly the original Melker is Graham Cole, who's now an OBE and was PC Tony Stamp in the bill. There's a series of quite unusual OBEs and CBEs in Doctor Who. Not unusual that Graham Cole should have one because he's done loads of charity work and is a bit of a national institution for being Tony Stamp in the bill. But in terms of his contribution to Doctor Who, he's not alone. And in fact, the first actor, the earliest chronologically actor to be recognised in the Queen's Birthday Honours, I discovered the other day, and it's much earlier than you'd think, and certainly not who you'd think, but I might do a podcast about that, so stay tuned. But yes, when you look at some of the... We look at the sort of division in society now, and it's always been with us. The arguments may change their footholds, but they're still had, and we have made a lot of progress. And yes, that a tabloid newspaper would pay children in order to set up an actor whose greatest crime is to play a gay man on a popular television program and be gay himself. But I mean, the moral arbiters of our newspapers are people who rifle through celebrities' bins for a living. It's anyway. I'd forgotten about that monster. I've seen the behind-the-scenes picture, and of course it's a visual effects guy with a thing, and I'd remember seeing that and it's saying it's from Time Flight. And I don't remember that bit, but it's this. It's this sort of temporary monster that doesn't do much, but it's a useful addition to the story. Well done, Nissa. I always like it when Nissa's a bit proactive. Oh, and the death of the monster's good. That's a nice effect. But where's the story going? Why? What, the villains fallen to the ground? The lighting here is lovely, actually. Not all of some of the rocks look a bit. Oh, and I remember that. Yes, the death. All that goo is fantastic. There's a series of quite nice goo from the nose deaths in the Davison era. There's the pteroleptil, isn't there? And there's a sea devil in Warriors of the Deep. Yes, Doctor, psychotronics. I think you'll find it's electronics. Yeah. Oh, and you don't want that because you don't want Professor Hater to be right because he's a twat. He's twat, am I right? Because I don't want to swear on these things. Is twat a swear word? And I remember, I think I was at my gran and granddad, so I must have been there for a couple of weeks. It was unusual. Mum must have been on holiday or something. Because the Master, I mean, that was just, because the Master was relatively new to me, because I didn't know who he was until he turned up in Legopolis, and I think my brothers had said, oh yeah, he's from the past and stuff, but I didn't really know. But the fact that he come back, because he's from the past, whoa. I'm still enjoying this. It's a bit flat in places, but that's, I'm not objecting to it at all. And there's plenty of Alec Wheel. There's a name to conjure. How many episodes is he credited on? I did work it out once, because when he died, he was Dorka near Adsick. Oh, bless her. Anyway, Alec Wheel, senior cameraman, legend. So, what am I going to? And I think I'm going to go to bed after this one. I was hoping to do this all in one night, but I started about an hour and a half after I'd intended to, because I couldn't find this. It was actually just at the end of the sofa, but I was getting frustrated, so I started not looking methodically, and I wound myself up and got cross, a bit like people do before they go on Twitter and things, and then they end up, spoiling things, which is what this is an antidote to. So physician, heal thyself. My favourite thing was Bilton and Stapley sort of reverting back to their piloty selves and parroting that stuff in that sort of grotesque parody of what they would do in their workplace, but it's because they were being forced so to do by the malevolence controlling the sanctum. I thought that was a really effective moment, and that they, particularly Richard Easton, did it very well. And it's a nice idea, the robbing of personality is of what makes us, particularly as they're such game fellows, those pilots. I thought was really effective. Now, what did John Cooper choose? I think I've got to go back a little bit for John, because I went forward a little bit when last time. Let's try there.
The best thing about episode 2 is the reveal of the Master. Oh, he's Khaled. Oh, he's not. He's the Master. Who would have known? Who's even there to see it? It doesn't matter. It's amazing. The best thing about episode 3...
Yes. As a kid, again, this is very much John taking us back to his childhood, which, to be fair to me, I wasn't present at. John, I didn't know him then. And actually, that reveal of the Master, when I was younger, that was big news. Only in retrospect do we go, why the hell was he in disguise if there was nobody there? But I suppose if he knew the Doctor was eventually going to turn up, he couldn't just throw that Khalid disguise on, could he? He'd been hours in makeup, and presumably he's eaten his makeup. His tissue compressionized his makeup lady. Reveal of Khalid is a good choice, but I like my choice too. Well, another day, another night, another Doctor Who commentary. So I hope you've got part 3 of Time Flight ready. I've got remote. I've moved my Blu-ray player. We're good to go. Press play now. It's still not much of a muchness, is it? Well, welcome to part 3 of Time Flight. It's nice to be back. I needed to get a kip the other night. I like this title sequence now. I didn't at the time. I thought it was too literal. I thought it didn't suggest time. It just suggested space. I thought the font was too modern. It's still not my favourite, I don't think. I think it's more self-consciously of its time than some of the previous title sequences. Or maybe they're just older, so therefore seem more timeless, which might not make sense, but I think it does, ultimately. I prefer the sort of time travel-y, abstracty. I love the work of Bernard Lodge. But I doff my cap to Sid Sutton. It's actually a very beautifully rendered title sequence, and I do like the Howl theme tune. It's all. I was having a conversation with somebody today. It's something to do with Doctor Who being part of our childhood. I know some of you will have come to it differently, and I apologise for that. But I think how we find Doctor Who is very important to sort of how we appreciate it. I think the reason it speaks to so many people is because we associate it with our childhood, and if our childhood was a happy place, it's reminiscent of that. If our childhood was slightly more difficult, it was a haven within that. And childhood I've found quite scary, and now I look back on it and realise that actually it was the safest time. It was emotionally, you're sort of protected from various things, or certainly practically you are. And so I'm nostalgic for a time I actually didn't find particularly easy, which sounds like a paradox, but it's not. Anyway, the Master, who dresses as a baddie, but it's gorgeous, that velvet, isn't it? But he wasn't going to be a plumber dressed like that. But I remember this being a really exciting development, and John chose it for his thing. I was so excited that the Master turned up, even though I'd found him a very uncomfortable watch in Logopolis, because he was that sort of disembodied laugh. I didn't like it, and that's the point. They are whiz, aren't they? Apparently there was wasn't there I'm referring to the Captain Stapley and the airline crew, but I think there was a sort of chaperone. There was a British Airways or a Heathrow Airport bunch to ensure that they maintained the standards of the crew. Otherwise the cooperation of Heathrow would not be as forthcoming. Or was dependent upon them not. I think one of them was supposed to refer to the passengers as punters, and that was taken out. Although I can well imagine, you would call your, if you're in the service industry, well, even as comedy clubs we talk about punters all the time, but that's slightly different. But that's a colloquialism. You'd probably be a company would, I think, now would allow for a bit more of a warts and all depiction. I think. I don't know. It's a very different beast from Earthshock, isn't it? It's like it's a different show from Black Orchid, a different show from Kinder, a different show from The Visitation. I think I rather thought Doctor Who was a bit sort of samey, apart from Earthshock, which stood out at this time. But of course it wasn't. I mean, the colour palette is the same. I always think of the Davison era as quite beige, which is not the most dynamic of colours. But I wanted aliens invading Earth and UNIT blowing things up, and I had people wandering around catacombs and I think I was hoping perhaps a dinosaur would turn up in this time period as well. Judith Byfield as Angela Clifford. Both of these people. Nigel Stock, I think, was dead within 4 years of making this. He's 62 here. And Judith Byfield, I think had died by the end of the 1980s. Certainly very, very young. Terribly sad. I actually had forgotten this scene. This is lovely, where the Doctor and Professor Hayter essentially go, "Yeah, this guy's gonna explain it to you." Nigel Stock is very good. He was a terribly good actor. He was in a thing called ONMD. He had his own series, wasn't he? And The Great Escape, I know. Forgive me if I repeat myself from the last episode I did. It was 2 days ago. It's a cheek, isn't it? I have the audacity to sit down with people to watch an episode of Doctor Who they were in 35 years ago. Go, what do you remember of this? I actually can't remember what I told you. What? The night before last, was it? I think I did. Well, you don't know. It was. I don't think I did it last night. I think I did it the night before. I'm currently recording in the time of coronavirus. I'm sure by the time that this reaches you, that will be long into the distant past, and that we will be plague-free and happy to go around, jumping on buses, eating out, earning a living and licking strangers' eyeballs. But for now, I'm trapped inside, watching and trying to recapture the childhood joy. I did like all of these characters when I was younger, and I do think Richard Easton is especially good. I mean, they are of a type. They are sort of jolly, and Rich. Yeah, I think I've mentioned the brothers, haven't I? And the fact that it's a program that only exists because Doctor Who fans know of it, because everybody from it. The brothers and the Pallisers, I think, essentially were the DNA that created the cast lists of John Nathan Turner's early Doctor Who. It just goes to show, be nice. Well, I mean, I would be anyway, but I know a lot of actors who aren't. Be nice to the crew, even the supposed there's no. I'm not using this word because it's one that I would use, but the lowlier members of the crew, because one day they'll be the producer and might just give you a job. And I do sometimes fantasize, and I have been able to cast things, but you sometimes go, yeah, he was nice to me, I'll give them a job. They were not so nice, and they're the ones, of course, that the producer wants. But yes, poor old Judith Byfield, she does the Tannoy voice as well. In the airport, but yeah, she died. She can't have been. Well, she would have been younger than me. Although I'm recording this on the day that Ian Marter was born and died. He died on his birthday, and he was 42, which is younger than I am now. Which I don't know what it is about me. I'm sorry about that. I do bang on about the dead. I think I've mentioned it before in commentaries as to why, but I imagine the exciting lives these people led, and I liked what they did. I liked the fact that they came into my home and transported me to other worlds, and I particularly liked actors who I'd see in one thing being very, very different in another thing. I always thought of that as a great skill. Now it's actually a bit of a drawback as an actor, because people like you to be the same. I can do all sorts of accents. Yeah, we know people who can actually just were born with the accent, so don't worry about any of that acting, mate. And of course, Nigel Stock, I think, has a stick-on beard, whereas today I think you'd pretty much be expected to grow a beard or have a beard, but it was much more theatrical, and we our eyes were used to theatricality in a way. This is very much almost three walls with the audience looking on. But Nigel Stock was in The Great Escape, and he did serve in the war. I've just written another podcast for my other series, Indefinable Magic, about the war records of various Doctor Who actors, and I mentioned Stock because he's in The Great Escape, which is one of the finest films ever made, a Christmas regular, which has in it William Russell, who has some decent bits to do, and Tom Adams from Warriors of the Deep, and Angus Lenny from The Ice Warriors and Terror of the Zygons. It's a wonderful film, The Great Escape. Donald Pleasance's wonderful performance, and Nigel Stock, I think he actually did hurt himself. There's a bit where he jumps onto the bed, but the planks have been removed by Steve McQueen because he's using the planks to shore up the tunnel, and so he jumps on the bed and the planks aren't there, and he falls through the bunk. The mattress falls through the bunk, and I think Stock actually did break his arm, or certainly hurt his collarbone or something when he did that scene, which is really painful, but in the end makes for an anecdote. That's all you really want. I like the red lighting there on Keith Drinkle, and I quite like the fact that Bilton and Scobie, who could have been a bit interchangeable, split up and get to do different bits, so that they therefore have their own sort of distinct slice of the action. And I remember very much being on Scobie's side because he was wandering around with a moustache. I always liked a moustache. I don't know why. I've never been able to grow a particularly robust one until relatively recently, and now I can actually taste mine, so needs a trim. Now, I've never quite understood the plot of Time Flight, but obviously this is what it centres around. There's the Seraphin, who, as I think I said before, their dominance of the sort of storyline isn't matched by their presence in the story, where they crop up in a bit to do a bit of chat, and that's all we see of them. So they're much more sort of talked about than seen for a bunch of creatures after whom the story was originally named. Oh, and yes, that's brilliant, isn't it? Because we actually saw them doing it, but I remember that being really a very claustrophobic idea, because there's no door, there's no way to get out. The wall has been put back, and I'm quite claustrophobic. I sometimes have nightmares about being locked in places, and I find that quite creepy. The idea that, oh God, we're now in a place and we can't get out. Oh yes, and this was really big news in the story, because he sent them off. He sends them off in the TARDIS, and you know that they've got to get back for the story to work. But that means that you know that they're going to do something heroic. And I quite like it when guest characters, under their own steam, they're not even with a companion. These two get to sort of take a part of the story themselves and do something that involves a bit of pluck and a bit of invention. I like that. I was always very interested in the new people that came in. And in a way less so about the main characters, because I almost took them for granted, which is probably why I've interviewed as many Vord as I have companions. That's not a figurine. That is a... I'm not sure it's wise to say that the shrunken corpses look like figurines, because often that's how they are rendered. Doctor, this looks like an action man. No, it's a shrunk corpse. But stop saying it looks like an action man. Because that is supposed to be a body, isn't it? That's supposed to be a Seraphin body. Now, come on, Professor Hater, you're supposed to be a scientist. So yes, it is. It's a corpse. What a horrible idea. You're holding a dead body, Doctor. Not a dapple Seraphin or whatever. It looks more like an Oscar, actually. It's the alien Oscars. So yes, I'm not. Oh, it's moving up and down the thing in the middle of the sarcophagus. But as I say, there's a lot of sort of chat. I'm not entirely clear about it. That's simple, isn't it? That gives the impression that Bilton and Scobie are... no, it's not a helicopter. What? And I like the way they call it TARDIS, like they've been watching 60s Doctor Who. And Grimwade was busy, wasn't he? Peter Grimwade, who wrote this, directed the previous story, Earthshock, and as a very, very good director, with great visual flair. I saw interviews with him later where he was quite testy about the renditions of some of the things that he'd imagined. So I can only imagine how this differed from what he might have felt he would have done with it. But I do feel a bit for Ron Jones, because he's saddled with the end of season when the money's run out. And this is... of course, this is... Yeah, the Seraphin have been nice. Say, yeah, we're going to come and chat, but we will kill your very young friend. So sorry about that. I think it's a flawed communication system. But it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because Professor Hater sacrifices himself, which is quite a brave thing to do. But he even when he sacrifices himself, he's an arse, because he's basically going, no, young lady, I shall save you because I'm an old man, although I'm actually much older than I look because I'm only in my early 60s. But instead what he goes is, oh, I'll get lots of knowledge. Yeah, but you will die. Doesn't matter, I'll know things. Yeah, it's not a terribly convincing argument. No, but it is one in keeping with my character, a slightly annoying scientist. I do like that effect, though. I mean, I know you can do that fairly easily now, but I remember working a work experience. I worked at a place that had a video editing machine, and you could press buttons that made it do that. But I still think it's neat. It does the job, and the sort of black and yellow is quite striking. And yes, this was great. Oh, yes. Oh, come on, Angela. It's just as trying as a New York stopover. And it's interesting that's, there's an actor who knows where the camera is, because he's having to sort of grip her and look her in the eye, but whilst not turning his back on the camera that's on him, because it's also got her face. Very good camera technique, Keith Drinkle. And he turns a bit more of himself to camera in Zygon, the spin-off. It's not even porn. That's the thing about Zygon. It's not even porn. It's a sort of thriller with a bit of flesh in it. It's a very it's a testament to the crazy world of Doctor Who that it exists. That's she's got very very 80s hair, isn't it? It's like hair that you can sort of lift off, like Lego hair. Oh no, she's succumbing again, Roger. Oh dear, I've never noticed the bubble bath on Professor Hayter's skull before. That's quite grim. But it's good at grim little touches like that. 80s Doctor Who that just made you feel like they were trying. Now, Anithon of the Brace of the Zerafin. I love the sort of cracks that they've got in there. It's a very simple effect, isn't it? It's two actors in sort of leotard one pieces with a bit of CSO colouring on them, but that crack suggests, some sort of entropy affecting the Zerafin race. And Anithon of the Zerafin, because what I quite like is that they're called Anithon and Zarak, aren't they? They're the sort of, and Anithon is the good one, and played by Hugh Hayes here, and Zarak is the bad one. So they run the whole gamut of good to bad from A to Z. So presumably there's one called sort of, I don't know, Martin, who's pretty much straight down the middle. He's neither good nor bad, But Banatak and Canathon, B and C, they're pretty good. They're not as good as Anithon, but they're quite nice. Whereas Steve and Tim, towards the end of the alphabet, they're rotters. Now Hugh Hayes, I met. I will never forgive myself for this. He was playing Horatio to the Hamlet of Nabil Shaban, and we went to see it, and he was a very funny, witty Horatio. I remember a touch now I don't think I'd let anyone get away with, where he comes in and says, "I am here, my lord," and had a pretend ear, but it had this sort of joshing banter that he had with Nabil Shaban's very good Hamlet, and it was a really good and interesting production. And we hung around afterwards, me and my friends, to get their autographs, but I hadn't. And I was pretty good with actors' names, but I think Time Flight wasn't massively on my radar, and I didn't recognise the name Hugh Hayes, but it said Doctor Who in his biog. So we'd got our books for Nabil Shaban to sign, and so my friend got Hugh Hayes to sign his book, and I think I just got Hugh Hayes to sign my programme and not my book, whereas I've got guest actors to sign my books loads since. And as they were going, he sort of looked at me as if to say, "Do you want me to sign your book, and I sort of did, but it was almost too late, although he was perfectly willing, so it was me that was... It's like when I do it now. If somebody offers me a cup of tea, and I want a cup of tea, and they're happy to make a cup of tea, I'll still, for the sake of politeness, go, no, thank you, don't want a cup of tea. So I was going, no. So I didn't take the opportunity that he gave me for him to sign my book. So I don't have Hugh, we'd said to him, what were you in Doctor Who? And he said, I ended up being banished by the Master. So he worked out who they were, who he was, and he remembered he was called Anithon because he signed that on my friend's book, where it presumably is still inked, and where there was a big empty gap on mine. It's and Zarak is quite mean. He's got a good voice. Andre Winterton, he's called. I remember him being in an episode of Howard's Way, but it's basically the Doctor and Miss Retegan are basically watching an alien race have a row with itself. It's a sort of curious moment, but the idea is a sound one of this sort of balanced race and the baleful influence that is doing whatever. How can he help? What's he supposed to do? Press tag? Start doing some wrestling? Right. So yeah, there's a sort of psychic battle that goes on, but it's quite a binary idea, that though, isn't it? Is that there are good Zerafin and there are bad Zerafin, I think we would. Well, no, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. But they render it very well. The two characterizations are do the job. I like the cracks, although in this cleaned up Blu-ray, I can see where the cracks are sort of not stuck on completely flush. And this is great because the sarcophagus has gone. No walls, and they're trapped. They're very good at cliffhangers like this in the Davison era, where they're just like, right, something's happened. We have to get the Doctor to say what it means. Like the end of Mordred Undead. It will be the end of me as a Time Lord. I've got no idea why, but I'm going with it because Peter Davison said it, and I believe him. Oh, Nigel Stock gets credited before Anthony Ainley. That is interesting. Probably only to me, but because Ainley's sort of considered part of the regular cast, and I know Peter Wingard is credited before him as well. I think Peter Wingard's credited before everybody in Planet of Fire, apart from Peter Davison. I had forgotten that Nigel Stock trumps Ainley. Well, there we go. That was episode 3. Oh, and because it was the other day when I did this, I need to call up. I don't think I still have John in my music, so I need to call up John Cooper to see what is his what are his favourite things. So before I play what John has chosen, which I've just lined up thanks to a nifty edit, I'm going to choose the idea that they get trapped inside that sarcophagus, and there's no purchase, there's no levers, there's no door, and indeed the cliffhanger is that they end up trapped inside there. But I find that idea that you get, they take ages trying to get inside a place, which is really hard to penetrate. But then once you're in there, if somebody takes away the hole that you used to get in, the means of escape, I find that idea very claustrophobic. So that is my favourite thing about episode 3. Although I could have gone for the pilot's little subplot and all that sort of stuff, but I will go for that.
The best thing about episode 3 is Professor Hater, played by Nigel Stock, who is one of several hundred classic professors that knock around in Doctor Who, challenging him and then accepting his way, and then, in this case, well, you'll find out what he does to himself.
So, well, look, we are trapped in lockdown and we cannot escape. But unlike the Master, the coronavirus will not finally defeat us. So, although we are now at the end of episode 3 and in a parlous state, I am confident we will all escape. Well, welcome back, everybody. Has the Master finally defeated the Doctor? Well, let's hope we're not disappointed by Time Flight episode 4. I come into it a little bit disappointed because I've just seen the camera angle I used to film episode 3, and it wasn't the most flattering. Thank goodness for Ken Burns saving the day again, hopefully, in post-production. Post-production, he says. Me trying to work out how to use a thing on my laptop. Anyway, it's my problem, not yours. Welcome back. Welcome back to Hadoke Towers as we watch, which I watched for the first time in Newbury in Berkshire when I was with my grandparents. I watched at least 15 minutes of something we're now going to see the whole of. Time Flight, episode 4. Press play. Press play now. Or thereabouts. Well, Time Flight, episode 4. I do never think that... I think Tom Baker's face works better on this title sequence than Davison. It's an odd picture of Davison, that. I don't think anyone's ever quite got into that. I think it's a slightly funny shape, and he's not got a great face for the Doctor Who title sequence. He's a brilliant actor and a brilliant Doctor, but the sort of flatness of his face, it doesn't help that title sequence. Is Time Flight the only story with a dash in the title? Don't write in. It's spectacularly unimportant, but I've just seen the hyphen, of course, Time Flight. Are there any other stories with a dash? I don't know. Do you know? I don't know. It might occur to me, but if I spend the whole whole episode thinking about punctuation in episode titles, this'll be a rum-do. So yeah, I didn't see this is obviously the recap, but I didn't see this first time round because my grandparents were watching Crossroads, and as I said a couple of episodes ago, yes, they'd made me convinced I'd probably only missed the very beginning, but let's count, because I certainly didn't see Professor Hayter in the TARDIS, which gets Nigel Stock his episode credit and episode fee. It's not much of a part from him because he appears at the beginning of episode 2 and he's dead by the end of episode 3. Poor old Nigel Stock. I'm sure he didn't lose any sleep over it. I like a wire, a red twisty cylindrical wire. See, now, because now we're all wireless, you see. Well, that said, I've got a whole load of wires traipsing about here in order to set this up. Hovering TARDIS, yeah. Well, I like the fact that Captain Stapler's taken his jacket off in order to get to work. Richard Easton I was very pleased to see him. He's in Kenneth Branagh's film of Henry V. Yeah, Nigel's so right. I still hadn't seen this bit. So this was still... Crossroads was still on. I'm sure it was Crossroads. I quite like the veins on the wall as well. Well done. Well done, Captain Stapley and First Officer Bilton. Good work. I like the fact they've got to do something a bit heroic. So yes, Richard Easton is the Constable of France in Kenneth Branagh's Henry V film, which I was very pleased about because, that was big news and everybody's in that movie. I mean, anybody who is anybody, from Judi Dench to Robert Stevens to Ian Holm. I mean, it was the creme de la creme of British theatrical and acting royalty. But he also, within that, and I thought, well, maybe, Easton is just amongst those, but Easton had also been in the stage version of Kenneth Branagh's Henry V, and he imported him, along with not many of the rest of the cast. So, for example, Robert Stevens plays Pistol in the film of Henry V, but it was Bernard Horsfall in the RSC version. And I always felt, oh, come on, Branagh, Robert Stevens doesn't need the work. You could have given it to Horsfall, because we like Bernard Horsfall in Doctor Who circles. So I was very proud that Richard Easton managed to make the trip, and he's in Dead Again as well, I think, and then worked in America, and he won a Tony Award, and also had a massive heart attack that meant he had to. I remember he had to pull out of a play or something. But was a great. But yeah, he did great work on Broadway. And as I record this, he died less than a year ago. He died just before Christmas 2019, but had a fine career in the States, which, as I say, had surprised me. I thought, a British actor's gone out and done that. But no, he was Canadian, I discovered later. So he had a pretty good international career, and he's in Time Flight. Good for you, Richard Easton. And he's very good as the constable in Kenneth Branagh's Henry V, which is a very good example of how to do Shakespeare on film very well. Shame, shame, everlasting shame, nothing but shame, says the constable. I hope that wasn't Richard Easton channeling his thoughts on his appearing in Time Flight, which has not got the best reputation, but I'm enjoying. The pace is good. I love the TARDIS on its side. Why is it? The TARDIS is so perfect. The fact that it's, I was never a great fan of Star Trek, and I say that, and when I mean I'm not a great fan of something, I've watched every episode and can name all the regular cast of all the series. I mean, I've watched every. I don't think I've watched all of Voyager or Enterprise, but certainly the first three. So when I say I'm not a fan, I'm not a massive Blake Seven fan, but I've watched it 3 times at least. I know who directed certain episodes. But the thing about Star Trek, and indeed Blake Seven, which I just sort of brought up, not intending to bring him into this argument, is that they have the best spaceship in the fleet, and in Star Trek you can only be part of the crew if you're the best at your job, you're the best goddamn pilot. That's from something else, but do you know what I mean? Whereas what I rather liked about Doctor Who is that the TARDIS was a bit knackered, and you couldn't really control it, and you had to hit the console with a hammer to make it work properly. And the Doctor, whenever his exam results were brought up or anything, he wasn't the best goddamn Time Lord we've ever had. He wasn't the stuff of legends. He was a chancer who got away with it. What his driver was to do right, but he was no sort of moral wiseacre. He was very flawed, and as somebody that didn't quite feel like I fitted in, he was my kind of hero, because everybody that saw him thought he was a bit of an idiot as well. I thought he was a bit of a weirdo or whatever. And the TARDIS on its side in the Concorde cargo hangar or whatever it is a lovely image. It's such a great thing. It's such a great shape. It's an aesthetically pleasing thing, yet with a ramshackle charm. And Davison's still got the energy. You don't get the impression he's just walked onto set from, having a cup of tea, chatting to the Sparks or whatever. He's herring about time and space, and everything's terribly dangerous. And he's always giving that impression. He's always finding something interesting to do, which is important for this sort of television, because nowadays you can cut around bits and bobs. In those days, when it's sort of vision mixed, sort of as live, even though it wasn't as live like it was in the 50s, it's still vision mixed as you do it. Whereas now you cut it much more in post. So an actor like Davison, who will do a thing like he'll point one way and then go the other, or there's always something going on with his face, or he's always got a little bit of, if not business, emotional volte-faces, or just something where the energy flies about, or there is business that keeps you involved or keeps you guessing or surprises you is very important sometimes when the viewers need something to keep their interest because an actor, for the sake of the shot that's been rehearsed or whatever, has to get from here to here, or the fact that it takes an actor slightly longer to get in and you can't cut around that in a way that you would now, where an entrance would entrances and exits take a much swifter affairs. He's worth his weight in gold, is David, and he's made that transition to the more modern way of making television. I love the fact that Captain Stapley's mucking about with the TARDIS has, which he's berating himself for, is actually scuppered the Master's plans. I think that's rather jolly. I like the way the pilots have been integrated into this. The temporal limiter. Yeah, so it's an interesting sort of bargaining on a Paleolithic landscape for something we don't really know what it is. Oh, the Master's column. There we go, and that's quite neat. That's a simple effect, isn't it? But all the extras coming out of a column that clearly only one of them would be able to fit into. See that? Stay. He's so good, and I was so cross with him as a youth because he wasn't Tom Baker. I hated him. He was my least favourite Doctor, Peter Davison, and he's now one of my favourites. I'd say he's probably in my top 3, and it just goes to show that you should revisit things, and I've revisited many a Doctor Who many a time, and I can constantly change my opinions. But yeah, there's a great line in School Reunion about saying for you're very conservative for somebody who behaves like such a radical, and Doctor Who fans are a bit like that when people say what's so great about Doctor Who, and we go, oh well, it's the flexible format, it can be anything. I remember loving that bit of green. It's just Swarfiga, isn't it? And it's not even supposed to be alien goo, but I remembered just loving the fact that there was green goo. It seemed real and exciting and space age, even though it's actually one of the earthly elements. But if you'd asked me any time, even if video hadn't been invented and DVDs where we could watch again, what do you remember about Time Flight? I'd go, I remember the bit with the green goo coming out of the Concorde, it's brake fluid, isn't it, or whatever. I remember the green goo, Concorde brake fluid. And this is very Doctor Who, changing the tyres on a Concorde in Paleolithic England. I'm not sure of the proportions, but I don't really care. It is because is it John's favourite story? Did he say? I think he did. It's jolly, and I love the fact that Tegan is getting to do she's getting to do her thing that she's been wanting to do all series. Instead of travelling in time and space, I want to be an air stewardess. I want to go from England to Schiphol Airport. I want to fly from London to Hong Kong. You want to go to an alien planet? No, I've got limited horizons. Thank you very much. Oh, film looks good, doesn't it? Film looks so much better. But I could always tell there was a difference, and I know that my mother wouldn't have known the difference. She if I'd said to her that's on film and that's on video, she wouldn't have known what I was talking about. I think we're trained, aren't we, to see it, we Doctor Who fans. I love the extra at the back who's also sort of cosplaying as Doctor Who. They're sort of chatting away, going, do some rhubarb. He's a rotten fellow, this Master, isn't he? Yes, he is, yes. Have you been in anything recently? I did a Yes Minister the other day. Oh, they're nice boys, aren't they? Yes, they are. But, yeah, poor old Ron Jones having to direct these sort of sequences when the money's run out, and it does have a bit of a feel of that. There's not an awful lot of pace to it or anything, but it's amiable. It's an amiable adventure, and yeah, I'm not angry with it. And John is a smart guy. He his love of this is tied up with his childhood, and I love the fact that he's brought that to the table with this. I like that sort of feline kind of, and it like he's sucking on his dentures in Villain. It's almost like I've had some stew and I've got a string of meaty gland between my dentures. But I do like it. It's that he does thoroughly enjoy his villainy. Does Anthony Ainley. And it's curious, isn't it, that they went for the sort of look and the sort of slight feel. They wanted him to be a reminder of Roger Delgado, whereas now, as we've seen, we go for as different a master as we do for the Doctor. This is glorious. Right, yes, of course, Tegan's job is that she is an air stewardess, so therefore what we need to do is we need to give her air stewardess lines, even though she doesn't go, bloody hell, guys, we've just had an adventure in time and space, and this is where the dinosaurs lived. Let's get back to Earth. You go, no, I will talk to them as if we were on a flight to Paris, because she's an air stewardess, and that's what air stewardesses go. It's one of the few moments where you go, I think we're in a program aimed at kids here a little bit. That where somebody's job becomes their character. And I can understand the temptation to do that, because you go, oh, finally we've got this character in a position where she gets to do the thing she's been dressed as for the entire season. That's another. Though it was actually, it did give familiarity and continuity. The fact that the regulars were dressed in the same clothes, but I prefer. I think I can see the reason that John Nathan Turner wanted consistent images to have, chances of merchandise and recognizability of brand. It's very modern, and yet nowadays we would go for more realism and go, no, people will change clothes between Doctor Who adventures. People do not wear the same things every day, and I prefer that approach. And I think it was a slightly backward step, even though I can understand why John Nathan Turner did it. That's very much a producer with his eye on what's out there rather than what's on here, which is an approach. It is a producer's approach. The Concorde stuff looks great. Oh, but we're going to have the shot now, aren't we? Of and the shaking's good. Oh, the Doctor's slightly out of focus there. Yeah, this film stuff's great because it looks beautiful on the Blu-ray. Now, I think the Blu-ray people have made that shot perhaps look slightly better than it was, which is the takeoff with a bit of Paleolithic set in the foreground, because I remember that looking a bit pony. But we know the memory cheats. Oh, and there's the shot of the Concorde takeoff. Yeah, and I'm not sure how I feel about that, because actually that did look pretty good, but I'm pretty certain it didn't originally. And I'm not, and I'm very good friends with all the restorers. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I do quite like it to remind me of what I saw when I was younger, even if what I saw was a bit terrible. And I do adore Captain Stapley's "What did I tell you, Doctor? Finest aircraft." You go, yeah, you are proud of your Concorde, and it is a beautiful looking thing. And Davison, again, he's got that Troughton thing of he's never entirely sure what he's going to do is going to work. And I love that. That's a brilliant image. That might be my favourite thing of the episode. It's the TARDIS on its side. Oh, now do I have to do two things? I can't remember my own rules. This is terrible, because this is entirely not for the demographic that these are aimed at. Doctor Who fans are people who like things to be just so. If I've got rules about how many things I have to be chosen and what the consequences of those are, they have to be the same every week, and I just can't remember. I think I have to choose one for this episode and one overall, because that's what John's doing. And then if I've chosen more than half of the things that I've chosen match with what he's chosen, one of us dies. I think that's the rules. And it's just, now the film, you see, it looks so good, and hats off to John Nathan Turner. Apparently nobody had filmed at Heathrow Airport prior to this. That's pretty good, and at a time when a lot of television looked quite similar, just the idea that an episode would be shot abroad was amazing. So this would be something. Which is why all those publicity photographs of them in front of Concorde were taken. This would mean that this would look unlike anything else on this week, and that's what you had to do with the amount of drama being churned out. That's what you had to do, because there was a lot of stuff which was actually a bit like some of the other Heathrow stuff here. Lots of middle-aged white guys in a room yelling at each other. That's the sort of drama I was brought up on. And so actually going, well, we've got it set in a genuine airport and it looks real and it's on film, was a way of going, this show is worth watching, because it's visually different. Are you good? But you don't need to run away, Doctor Who, because but you the airport guys do know who you are. But I remember that looking worse when I watched it too. And he's zapped the master away. Does he do a cricket thing? Yes, he does a cricket thing. Boom. Which again, Tegan is an air hostess. The Doctor likes cricket, so if he can use a cricket metaphor, he absolutely will. But it's a bit of a sort of off-screen exit for the Master. In fact, Master doesn't have an awful lot to do, does he? In that story, he doesn't get a big slice of the action. Where's Tegan? She is walking around Heathrow Airport, reminding herself what she's missing. And this was a neat swerve, because it was a surprise. I mean, I didn't get the magazines anyway, so I didn't know when people were leaving. But I remember being surprised and disappointed that Tegan was leaving, and of course she wasn't. But very cleverly, she's not in episode 1 of Arc of Infinity, so you don't realise she's coming back. You think she's gone. They're very cheeky, these three pilots. They're quite insubordinate in a very jolly hockey stick sort of way. They are quite wizzo, aren't they? I think Peter Grimwade went to private school, if my recollections of what he says about the writing of Mordred Undead are anything to go by, and these guys are like the sort of prefects. Keith Drinkle's having a whale of a time at the end there, being a bit cheeky with his boss. He's clearly going, yeah, you vote, you Kip. But that's Brian McDermott, who I think it was the referendum party in those days that McDermott represented. Yeah, he's got a beige jumper on as well. There's a lot of jumpers in this story. Yeah, I think you are. Is that Les Conrad with the beard? I'm going to go for broke and say that's Les Conrad, that policeman with the beard. And there might be a subtitle here going, no, it's not. He's talking rubbish. I will spare my blushes occasionally. Les Conrad, the policeman with the beard, if that is Les Conrad, is the dad of the twins in the Twin Dilemma. He's also one of the gunrunners in Caves of Androzani. He goes back, he's in Ambassadors of Death. He crops up now and again. He's a supporting artiste, but he's the dad of the twins in the Twin Dilemma. Oh dear, Mr. Sheard's got, oh dear. Yeah, and that was a real shock. And I remember my granddad being quite shocked. Oh, is she leaving? Oh, she's crying. You could see the tears. That's a lovely wheeze, because that's the end of the season. But it ends the season on a sort of shocked note, because also it's not like a normal departure. If she'd gone off and married somebody, you'd have sort of gone, well, I'm used to companions leaving that way, so yeah, okay, that's the end. This, it does feel like a cliffhanger. It does feel like something that's not the final word, even though, as I say, when it goes back in the following season, she's not in episode 1, so you go, oh well, maybe she has gone. So he was full of good ideas to sort of keep it mixed up a little bit, John Nathan Turner. And I actually wonder if that might be my other thing. What am I going to say? Shall I say it's the TARDIS on its side? I just love that image. The TARDIS on its side in the Concorde hold, and Tegan's fake cliffhanger are my two things. My one thing about episode 4 and my bonus thing. What has John Cooper chosen? Having chosen Time Flight for us, which I think was a lovely challenge, and I hope I managed to be enthusiastic, and I hope I've made up, because I do feel guilty, because I'll use John's introduction to every episode of this, where he basically says, when he came out to me as a fan and we were going to bond as fellow fans, and he said, my favourite story is Time Flight, and I said, that's rubbish. I hate me for that. I hate me from the past. So I hope I've managed to make up for that by having jolly fun with the people of Time Flight. And I didn't even choose, this is early on in this process, I'm deliberately trying not to choose an actor or a character where they do a thing, because otherwise I do that all the time, because I've written a lot about actors. Actors are very much my thing. Character actors I love, and I will talk about them at length, but I've got 4 episodes in which to do so. But I think it's cheating if I keep picking them as my favourite thing, much as I love Captain Stapley and Richard Easton, who I do eulogise in Running Through Corridors Volume 3. I'd love to go coming soon, but I don't know if it is. But that's proof that I've written my bits. Anyway, what's John chosen?
And the best thing about episode 4 is Concorde flying through the time vortex, which just looks absolutely amazing. And if you are like a 10-year-old watching that, it's just like, oh my god, this is amazing. The TARDIS is inside Concorde, flying Concorde through the time vortex. That is things that kids want to see. My bonus thing about the story is how terribly nice and British the captains of the aeroplane are. The captains of Concorde, terribly nice, not swearing. We seem to be in the prehistoric era. Oh, never mind. And that is Time Flight is one of my favourite stories. I love it to pieces, and I hope I'm going to make you love it as well.
Yeah, John, and that, so you did. Our minds were in accord at various places, even though I didn't necessarily finally fixate on the same things that you did. I think we were of a mind with various things. I'm delighted with the things that you chose, but I'm also quite pleased with the things that I chose as well. Although I think the TARDIS on its side in a hold is cheating a bit, but it seems to me to encapsulate so much of what the charm of Doctor Who is, and how its iconography is so adaptable and malleable and charming. And I think Doctor Who at its best is very, very charming. So I hope you were charmed by Time Flight. I hope you enjoyed watching it at my house with me and my friend John Cooper. John is a delightful comedian. He does a character called Danny Pensive, who is, I've used the word charm very recently, is the most charmingly wonderful evocation of sort of innocent joy and guileless aficionado-dom. And he wins you over from the minute he's on stage. He's a great wordsmith too, John, and with that character sums up a lot that is a lot of the sort of otherworldly innocence of people who like stuff, and I think that's something to be celebrated and is often something to be mocked, and John manages to celebrate without mocking whilst also being terribly funny. And he's a great illustrator too, and I haven't obviously listened to the coda to his message, but I know I told him to plug his stuff, so do go and find his illustrative stuff and his his cartoons and his stories online, because they'll be up your street, because he is a child of Doctor Who. He was born in Jurassic England and brought to the present day by Concorde. So check out his stuff if you can. It's been a joy talking to you. I hope it's been tolerable to listen. That was the end of Time Flight. There'll be a brand new story in the next edition of Happy Times and Places, which is what we always try to maintain here. So for now, with a smile on our faces, it's time to say cheerio.
I think you'll find.
I think you'll find.
I think you'll find. I think you'll find.
Just a quick one to say, I think you'll find I was correct. It is indeed Les Conrad as the bearded policeman. Thanks to my guest, John Cooper. John is a terrific comedian who has lately prospered on stage with his alter ego, Danny Pensive, a disarming and charming love letter to geekery, a beautifully benign and gentle creation who will particularly appeal to listeners of this kind of podcast. Check him out if you can, and also John's other creative endeavours, which include illustration and cartoonery. I'll leave the final words to him and wish you all the very best until next time we meet on or behind the sofa for another episode of Time and Space's best ever TV show.
You can see me on stage as Danny Pensive, and I have a comic out at the minute called Distance, which is all about the crazy things and dark things that have been happening in the world since March. It's a strip that I've started. It's going on Kickstarter. You can find out more about it at johncooper.org.uk. Happy times and places. Bye bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this omnibus of happy times and places with me, Toby Hadoke, and my special guest, John Cooper. I'd also like to thank my patrons, Rob Leonard, Jenny at Bluebox99, Paul Cook, John Deere, Chris Dunford-Kelk, Siobhan Galichon, Ian Key, Joe Llewellyn, Stephen Moffat, Richard Straw, Luke Adkins, Peter Adamson, Will Brooks, Richard Byatt, Paul Carrington, Andy Case, Rob Dawson, James Gould, Joe Llewellyn, David Matthewman, Stuart Mitchell, Nathan Moore, Melvin Pena, John Rivers, Keith Say, Len Stewart, Nick Temple, Apollo C. Vermouth, Rich Wiggins, Michael Williams, Adam Westwood, Stephen White, Mark Aldridge, Sebastian April, James Blackett, Kyle Borks, Hugh Buchtman, Anthony Carroll, Susan Christian, Steve Churchill, Paul Colnaghi, Peter Crocker, Sarah Krotzer, Dave Curran, Rob Dawson, Michael Dennis, Tim Dickinson, Pete Dillon Trenchard, Paul Dykes, Andrew East, David Gillespie, Charles Gears, Simon Guerrier, Paul J. Guest, Duncan Harvey, Simon Hodges, Sam Hollingsworth, Matthew Hooliston, Darren Howard, Gregory Hudson, Christopher Joyce, Judith Jackson, and a few people lower down the alphabet who'll get name-checked in a different podcast. The music for this one is composed by Dave Gates, and all my podcast artwork is done by Dylan Patterson. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and remember to rate and review this at whichever podcast outlet you get it from, because that really does help. You can support me on patreon.com/Toby Hadoke or do a one-off at kofi.com/Toby Hadoke, or just spread the word, or just enjoy it. That's the main thing. Enjoy. And thanks for listening in the first place.